welcome back to season 7 of Film versus Film. I am joining. Oh, fuck. I'm going to take this again. Sorry. Hello, and welcome back to season 7 of Film versus Film, here from my secret Grecian compound. My name is Quinn Boys. I have just eaten an entire pie, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host. Fuck me.
Did have a fake name?
No, I have a thing.
That was a good one.
I know. I have a thing for you.
I was like, what's the fake name?
Okay, I got it. Hello, and welcome back to season 7 of Film versus Film on last time. Then we're going to go. And then no stops. Hello, and welcome back to season 7 of Film versus Film here at my Grecian compound. My name is Quinn Boys. I have just eaten an entire pie, and I am joined, as always, by my trusty co-host. He just killed my cat with some garden shears, Leonard Nimoy Jr. What's up, Leonard? How's it going?
It's Leonard Smith Jr.
Leonard Smith Jr.?
Leonard Smith Jr.
Did you change it?
No, that's always been my name.
Okay, my bad.
Still getting punished from losing season 6. You know what? It took you a long time to eat that pie. I was watching you. I was standing over you watching you eat that pie.
I started crying because I couldn't finish it.
And I was like, when is he going to stop eating this pie? And, you threw up.
I was worried it wouldn't keep.
You were, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Very excited today. We're talking about movies too weird to watch with your friends.
Yes.
And we have a great guest today, writer. And listen, I'm going to do, this person inspired me.
Wow.
To go to UCB and take classes at UCB. I saw his show, Improv Nerds, with Phil Augusta Jackson, and I literally signed up and took classes with him. He was my one-on-one teacher, Brandon Gardner. Hello, Brandon.
Hi. Wow, that's amazing. I love hearing that.
Yeah. It's. I'm sorry that
Leonard
that was probably a weird intro.
No, that's such a touching intro.
Yes.
Leonard is already trying to win your vote. We are a minute and a half in. Damn. I didn't know that. That's very cool.
It is the truth. And Brandon was my one-on-one teacher, and he was a great teacher. Wow. Very great.
And we did that improvised short film.
Yes.
You're so funny.
And I was very gracious and nice that you asked me to be a part of it.
Must have been like a full circle moment for you.
Yeah.
For you, not
for
so much
me.
for you.
Yeah, for me. Yes. I was like, oh, hell yeah. This is dope.
That's very
And
cool.
we're here talking about weird movies today, Brandon.
What's the wording of the prompt again? Movies too weird to watch with your friends, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Which is we both were like, I was saying right before we started recording, we were like, what does this exactly mean? Like, do we want to, or should we trim this? Should we define it more? Should we, how do we want to like look at this? I mean, I think it is pretty straightforward, but we always like to get a little creative with the prompts that allow us some leeway. Brandon, can you talk about why this was the prompt that you suggested?
I think there's 2 reasons. So one, I just so happened to have watched one of the movies you picked.
Oh,
within the week.
Whoa.
Before
so
you
it was
offered
in my
us
head before I offered you the prompt.
Oh,
wow.
shit.
And then the other reason was that at one point I had seen The Lobster, which another movie by one of the directors we're going to be talking about. And I really liked it. And I told my sister to watch it. And then I must not have said that much about it. And she was at like a girls trip weekend with like friends from college. And she was like, well, my brother said this movie's good.
Oh, no.
Man.
And so they watched The Lobster together.
Have you seen The Lobster, Quinn?
No.
Okay.
But I know a little bit about it. I know it's the Colin Farrell movie where you kind of have to like pair up or you turn. I know the general synopsis. I don't know how it's fucked up, but I know that if it's Yorgos Lanthimos, it's probably fucked up somewhere along the way.
Yes, I think it was like his first English language one after Dogtooth. And so all of her friends were like, what the fuck are we watching?
Who is your brother?
Yeah,
they know me, so I think it was sort of like, of course, this is what he your weird brother.
Oh, wow. Lobster, very good movie.
I haven't seen Lobster. I haven't seen Killing of a Sacred Deer, but I've seen like the last few Lanthimos.
Yes.
And then I have seen both of his Greek language films, or maybe he has more than that, but I've seen Dogtooth and I'm forgetting the name of the other one now. But yeah, so I had seen that. I'm missing the middle. I'm missing the middle of his film.
I have seen Lobster. I've seen Killing of a Sacred Deer. I have not seen Poor Things yet. I also have seen Dogtooth because I chose the movie Dogtooth by Yorgos Lanthimos. I saw it in like 2011, 12 on Netflix.
That's like
it was
right
like
around
on Netflix. It came out in 2009.
Yeah.
And was on Netflix. And I was like, I'm gonna check this out. And if you haven't seen the movie, it is about a mother and a father, mainly a controlling father. They live on a compound, or their home is gated, and they have 3 adult children who have never seen the world. They've never left their home, and they are, I guess, homeschooling them, teaching them incorrect things about the world, and they're trying to keep them pure and safe, but they've corrupted them without knowing it. Trying to these adults are basically children.
Yeah,
and it is an interesting interpersonal relationship type of movie, and it all takes place in this one setting, and I think it's I don't want to speak on the narrative of the movie, but it is interesting seeing the dynamics of someone trying to control every aspect of their children's life and keep them pure. And it's
we've mentioned our collective improv background. One of my least favorite things in improv, and this is maybe just, I think it's to certainly to perform and to see, is adults acting like children.
Okay.
Which is a thing. You got to be game if someone's like,
Yes.
you're a 7-year-old and you've been put in timeout. You got to do it. But as a adult man in a 6'2", 200+ pound body, I always just feel very, very nervous or embarrassed, I guess, to be doing those scenes. And I was like, I had a lot of respect for these adults acting like kids in
because it's not that they're acting
humiliating
like
ways.
children. They are adults who have been raised.
Well, no, I understand. I'm just saying it was giving very much like improv scene where everyone plays like kindergartners that don't want to do nap time sometimes. But very ably performed. I'm just saying. Okay. I was thinking in that mindset. I don't know if that occurred that much to you at all, but yeah,
that's interesting. I would say the key to that usually is this is just for improv fans out there. I would say don't play the kids stupid, because I think that's something grown-ups do, is they play children as being dumb. And then like you can play closer to yourself than I think you can.
Yeah.
So like you don't have to change your voice radically. And yeah, more often than not, I think when it's like real uncomfortable, both to do or to watch, is it's like, mommy, I did this. And it's like, I have kids. It's not how kids talk. They're not dumb. And then the characters in this movie, it's interesting. It's like they are probably in the early 20s. I don't know how old exactly.
I was wondering about
they look,
that.
20s.
Early 20s.
And they just have like the innocence of children. Mm-hmm. While still being like 22 years old.
Mm-hmm. And knowing CPR and knowing, it's interesting how they're well versed in certain things. Right. But as far as like socially, they are,
and culturally,
and culturally, they're just
the youngest daughter. That scene where they're like, mom is gonna give birth to 2 babies and a dog. The youngest daughter claps very like this. I noticed that. I was that's a very,
and the dancing scene, the dancing scene, the choreography. I was like, it felt real. Yes, I was like, this seems like this person never
has not seen dancing.
When they're running to get the plane from the sky that mom throws out on the, which is I love too, because like you think about like, okay, if you've been raised by kind of insane parents, however well intentioned we could, which I don't even know if you could argue that, but they think they're doing what's best for them. And if you've been raised by these insane parents, you wouldn't have. It's just interesting to think like, how would that manifest? So when someone's like, the word cunt, actually it means lamp. But the other thing is like a plane up in the sky. If you really haven't been taught well, like you wouldn't have that like depth perception, or or so when it falls from the sky, it is still small, and they're never like, well, that doesn't make any sense. It's like they don't know. And when they're running to get it, I noticed also like the way that she like trips her brother and they run her. It's very much like kids rushing to get like Easter egg hunts or whatever. It's
what I appreciated about this is the unfolding of the narrative of how there were just little hints here, like because the first 15 minutes you're like, what is happening? And then when she's like, oh, will you pass me the telephone? Like, and it's the salt. And it's like, okay, wait a second, what? And then it's finally like,
why would they need a word for telephone?
Exactly. And then finally it's like, oh, this is all, it's like, it's kind of subtle before it's extremely heavy-handed with what is happening in the situation. But before we get more into Dogtooth, what was your film, Quinn?
So this great prompt. I think you gave me your pick first. And
Instantly. I knew instantly.
I think I took like a
was.
full day because I was like, and I had seen Dogtooth. So I was like, let me find one that strikes a similar to, or like I think could, my pick was the 2017 David Lowery Ghost Story. A ghost story, which is a ghost story, but unlike any kind of ghost story that I can think to recommend, that I would otherwise recommend. Like, it's not a horror movie. I don't think it's a horror movie, but it is extremely melancholy and depressing. Mm-hmm. So I kind of have the same like bummer effect. Anyway, it's basically about two characters. Other characters pass through. I mean, really, it's about one character, Casey Affleck, who plays a musician. He's living in a house in Texas, I think. Did they ever say?
I don't think they ever said.
It's a rural area. Yeah, in my mind, it was North Carolina, but that was just guessed.
I thought North Carolina as well.
Okay, yeah. So they're living in a rural. They're living in a house, and it's this like the house has some history. And Rooney Mara plays the girlfriend. She wants to move. Casey Affleck's like, this house has some history here. That's honestly about as much preamble as you get before Casey Affleck dies in a car accident. We see his body
in front of his house.
Right in front of his house. We see his body on the slab afterward in the morgue, or about to be taken to the morgue. And Rooney Mara lifts the sheet over him, and then he just rises up. And now he has
2 minutes later.
Yeah, she leaves.
Shroud. Yeah. Yes, she leaves. Some time passes. This movie is both of our movies, by the way, are like 90 to 95 minutes. And I think if you tried to make them any longer, people would be like, I'm out. I can't. Like there's like an endurance quality to both of these movies.
Both movies have scenes with like moments of silence, but they're so different.
Yeah.
They're so different with how the
you
moments
could cut like worse versions that were like 45-minute movies.
Yeah.
If you cut some of those long moments. Yeah.
But basically, so Casey Affleck wakes up, he gets up. There seems to be a like he can pass on kind of moment while he's still in the hospital, but he doesn't. He goes home, and he's obviously unseen by anyone. No one can recognize him, but he's wearing this morgue sheet as like a death shroud. We never see him again
in
his current form. Like you never see under that sheet. Well, you see him again when he comes back from But all right, yeah. Well, basically, Casey Affleck has like the easiest check ever because I don't know
some of those standing poses, I was like,
I don't know if Pedro Pascal is really in the Mandalorian suit the whole time. I feel like that's like a thing that people say. Is he in it? Is he just doing voiceover? I bet you Casey Affleck's a big enough weirdo that he's like, no, it's me every time I'm under that sheet. But you never really see him again as the ghost character, and he just sort of haunts. He doesn't even haunt much, but he just sort of exists in his old home. He sees his girlfriend grieve. He sees her start to get over it. He sees her eventually leave the house. He sees the new tenants come in, and you just sort of see generations pass by as he sort of sits there at that sheet. There's not much more to it, but it has like a very sort of sad. You could call it profound. You could call it boring. I understand both. Like it's a very weird movie, unlike any other I've seen. I was like, I would never recommend this movie to a group of friends, like sitting, not necessarily to someone to watch themselves, but if someone's like, hey, we got the boys over or whatever, it's like, what are we watching? I'm like, let's pop in Ghost Story. Let's feel bad. But that was my pick.
Like 20, 30 minutes in, I was like, this feels like a boring version of A House of Sand and Fog.
Not seen it.
I also haven't seen it.
It is a very depressing movie about someone, her husband like passes and she like stops paying her mortgage and like is just and then like she like her house gets foreclosed on and she like has to get evicted. And it's like a crazy.
Just lets it all happen.
Yeah, but there's a lot more things that happen in that movie than this movie. Had you seen this movie before?
I had not seen this one.
Okay.
But what's funny is that I mentioned recommending The Lobster to my sister. I brought up with her that I was going to watch that a ghost story for this podcast, and she's like, "Oh yeah!" And her husband had started that movie, thinking they were going to watch a horror movie, and somewhere into when he's the ghost, and I feel like it's worth mentioning, he is like the classic children's costume Halloween ghost with like a sheet with cutout eyes,
black eyes,
which is like one of the reasons why I also, while I was watching it, I was like, is Casey Affleck in there the whole time? Because he doesn't have to be. You never like see his eyes inside the sheet, but it's almost like cartoonish, the classicness of this ghost sheet. And I think they watched maybe 10 minutes of that and were like, this is not what we wanted to watch tonight, and stopped it.
I was reading things about it and apparently they were marketing it as a horror thriller when it was coming out.
Very misleading.
Yeah, that's extremely misleading.
That's a classic. Let's try to trick people into this. Movie. I actually to go away from both these movies for a second to go towards your something like your sister story.
Mm-hmm.
My then girlfriend, now wife, when we were in college, she was on a trip to London with her mom and her sister and her sister's boyfriend who was out there. So they were like the four of them around London, and I had seen Drive, which. The Ryan Gosling film Drive, which is very popular. I don't think we would have picked it for this movie, but it had a similar thing where Drive was sued. It's kind of like a joke lawsuit, or I don't know. I mean, I don't know where it went. Drive was sued by a woman who saw it because she was like, this movie was marketed as a Fast and Furious movie. And I saw it and it's ultra violent and it's weird and it's atonal. Like, you know, she like sued it for being falsely advertised, which I don't totally remember the trailers, but I don't also know how you market Drive anyway.
I want my
so anyway, I see it kind of based off that. I was like, this movie was so weird that some lady sued it.
Yeah.
At the time, Ryan Gosling was not really on my radar. I didn't think, but after that movie, I was like, oh, Ryan Gosling kicked some ass at this movie. I was kind of a fan. Anyway, I see it. I love it. I'm talking to my girlfriend who's in London, and I was just like, I just saw this great movie, Drive. You should see it. Don't see it with your family. I think it's weird and it's violent, but I think you'd like it. And she texts me like 2 days later and she goes, oh, we took your advice. We went to see Drive. That movie's fucking weird. Why'd you tell us to see that? I said, and it was like in text, I said, don't see this movie with your family. I said explicitly, this was not a movie to take mom, sister, and sister's boyfriend to on her recommendation via me. Yeah. So she's telling me like, but just so you know, we all thought that movie was, I'm like, join the class action suit, I guess, because I absolutely told you to not see that movie. And I'm still mad about it all these years later, but I do, that happens sometimes.
Drive is funny because I understand why you would say it's a weird movie and definitely why you would have told your girlfriend not to watch it with her parents. But it weirdly is a movie I'm sure a group of guys have gotten together to watch.
That's why I wouldn't have picked it, because I do think there is the right audience for Drive. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But
I feel like the right audience for Ghost Story is like literally someone going through
terminally ill.
Like
maybe that's too much.
Maybe it might be too much. I feel like this movie though, I watched this movie last night. I had not seen it.
Oh, right. You said, yeah.
At like midnight. And it was a long day.
You like it to be really fresh in your mind.
I was very tired. Yes. And I watched it in my dark room, and I think it helped. I feel like this movie you need to see in a theater where you can have nothing distract you. You have to focus. You have to feel. I feel like this movie is all about feeling it and invoking something in you, hopefully. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this movie, honestly.
Well, you brought up the pie eating scene.
Yes.
Which is like, I think one of the things that stays with you.
Yeah.
And is really interesting where after the husband has died and the wife comes home, Rooney Mara comes home from the hospital, like a neighbor dropped over a pie. And you see her
realtor who's like, P.S.
Her realtor who's like, when do you want the painters to come?
Yeah, like, well, okay.
Like, yikes, lady. And then she sits down on the floor with it and eats most of it on screen. Yeah. And it takes a few minutes.
In a single take, I think.
In a single take.
4 minutes.
Yeah.
Did you time it?
4 minutes she's eating the pie.
You knew how much time he was on the slab. You knew how much time she was eating the pie. Let her just stop watching this movie.
It is an interesting movie to stop watch because you're like, how long have I been watching this pie?
I stopped.
You were stop watching
times.
because you
how
couldn't
much time is left in this movie? It feels so long.
Yes.
Yeah.
But sorry, she's eating the pie.
So she's eating, I forget even what my point was, except that like, I feel like a lot of what makes this movie weird is just how it plays with time. So both like really long takes, like for me, the ones that stood out were the pie eating and then the party. There's like 10 minutes later, like these like artsy sort of like alternative adults, like the kind of house party I've probably been to. There's like this weird guy who's talking about Beethoven and sort of the legacy of art.
That's my favorite scene, but yeah.
I thought it was interesting.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. It was like so long.
It's
like you
long.
really let it monologue for a long time.
Yep.
And then on the flip of it, there's time where, and I think this is cool too, where like many, many years go by from like one take to another, where you're seeing the ghost in one room and he turns and it's suddenly Christmas. And he turns again and it's one of the kids who's staying there now's like birthday or something. And so I think that exploration of like when you're a ghost, 50 years can go by like that, but then you can also just sit at a party and watch someone talk. and you get the whole thing.
And
it was classic. Also, like this guy was like probably crossfaded, and he's just like classic guy at the end of the night at a party, just being like, "Let me tell you about eternity." You know what I mean? Which is what the movie's about. So it's interesting to see this guy kind of pontificating and talking about like what did he say? Like painters, musicians stop making music, painters stop, but writers write, musicians.
It's like your legacy. And
how you leave your legacy. Yeah. And
now,
Casey Affleck was a musician, but again, it doesn't really matter. It's not like he was worried about eternity. It's
but
just
in
like
that scene, is he trying to tell us what this movie are about, or is he trying to tell us that is not what that you can leave behind? Like people matter. The notes that you leave in the house, and like you can be remembered by the little things.
That's
that you matter.
The closest thing
because the light flashes and is like C is his name in the movie. Is he angry? Is he upset? Like when I first was watching, I was like, oh, he's trying to tell us what this is all about. Or I'm like, oh wait, is he saying it's the opposite of this?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's maybe why we both pick like, what is Dogtooth about? Like it can be about very many things. I mean, I think a ghost story is what we're saying it's about, but it could also be your read on it could be totally, you could be like, it's all pointless. And I can be like, it's all profound, like I think it provides you with ammunition to say either if you want.
I don't think there's any in between. I think either you are emotionally inspired and love this movie, or you're like, this is the most movie boring to be both. Piece of crap.
I think that from like those long periods of like boredom come these like and maybe you need those to feel like the other stuff is like intentional, but like I think it's just like I don't really believe in it. Certainly no like afterlife like is presented here. I don't know that I believe in the afterlife at all, but the idea of like you just hang out forever and then eventually time goes back. Like
it was a very interesting idea
to the beginning of that. So it's like I kind of know what this movie is. Oh, it's kind of artsy. Like there is really no his final goal, I guess, is to just scrape that little note that Rooney Mara leaves in the house, because she mentioned she would leave pieces of little notes in nooks and crannies because she moved around a lot, and that she would always leave a piece of her there. And he just wants to read it. But there is something like that's not a plot. There's no arc. There's no you're just sort of observing this. I love that other ghost in the floral sheet across the street. That cracked me up. I don't know. See, like, I don't know if it's supposed to be funny. It also was very sad, just being like, I'm waiting for someone, but I don't remember who.
Yeah.
It's very like waiting for Godot.
Yeah. And I thought that was maybe going to happen to him, but
kind of did. I mean, he was sort of like waiting for.
I wanted to hate this, but I don't know. I
thought for sure you'd hate it.
I know.
Where did you break out of Brandon?
I definitely didn't hate it. I think like something with like movies in general that I get most excited by is when I feel like I don't know where it's going. And so like that's the thing that I'm almost most grateful for and this one I did not know where it was going. This was not one where you like start to see the formula as you watch and you're like, oh, I get it. I know what's happening next. I truly did not ever see a formula to this. And like you're saying, it's like I think like when they're alive, they're sort of cuddling on the couch, they're about to move, and she mentions that she moved a lot when she was a kid and that she would leave these notes. So it sets up that information. You don't know how important it is yet. And it is like his very simple goal is through the sheet to try to pull that note out of a crack in a doorway. And there's that part he's about to get it when the house gets demolished.
That I legitimately was scared. Like that scared me. I was like, "Oh shit!" That was because it was such a titular
but I think
moment.
that's like a great thing of like of like stakes of like because it's so important to him.
Yeah,
it starts to matter where you're like he needs to see that note and whatever it is, and they never show you what was on the note.
Yeah, of course
it was profound enough that he was like, "Okay, I'm done.
Gave him
I can go now."
Yeah. Before we get back to Dogtooth, I want to go back to the pie eating scene because it's at the beginning, like in the first 15 minutes of the movie, 20 minutes of the movie, and you don't know what's happening. You don't know what this movie is. I was watching that movie. I was watching that scene so intently, like waiting for something to happen. I was like, "Oh, this is like a setup. Like they're building up. There's going to be a moment. Something's going to pop. Something's going to happen.
She's going to see him, or
and then nothing happens.
Yeah.
So it was interesting. And then also, when you're saying they aren't setting up anything, I was like, oh, when they cut back and they like started to like, I was like, oh, time is setting over again. And
they
then
don't go
like,
all the way back to the beginning of time. They go back to the beginning of the house,
where
which is
the
interesting.
land
like,
was.
the rules.
I was like,
of the-
oh, he was the one who made that noise when they were asleep.
Right.
I instantly thought that, which it felt pretty obvious. But then they kind of give some of the narrative that you missed, like arguments and things that were happening, and him not wanting to leave the house, and him not knowing why, and not being able to communicate it.
Yes.
But it was like, so that was interesting.
He's
That
always
was
been
interesting.
there.
He had this connection to it. He couldn't explain.
So it was like when the ghost sees the other ghost, I was like, wait, what the hell?
when he sees his own ghost.
Yeah.
I was like,
where I'm like, well, are we going to start having like 8 ghosts in the room?
I was, but then he finally gets to leave.
To go back to improv one more time, there is that fun thing of like, well, if this is true, then what else? Like, I'm sure as he's breaking this story, David Lau, the writer director, I'm sure that he was thinking that he's like, so what? All right, so if he's a ghost, then he goes back to the beginning and he dies again. Is there another ghost? You know, and I'm watching, I'm thinking like, no, probably not. Oh, okay, yeah, maybe. Like, it is an interesting, thing. And then like you see for a moment that like future with the huge high-rise skyscraper,
Yeah, very like Blade Runner-y or something.
Yeah, and so it's like I did not anticipate that from this movie when we were just in this small kind of boxy house for most of it, and then both of our movies take place on just in one location.
Yeah, one location, technically. Dogtooth. I loved this movie when I first saw it, and I like unique stories. I like that someone had this idea and they fully fleshed it out, and it felt real. It felt like there have been in the history of time.
Right.
There's been someone in a situation like this. And every little aspect of the antenna being broken off the car, and like every little lie that has been told since they were used and that they believed, it just felt so real to me. And I just love these type of movies because I know that someone with an amazing imagination was able to create this, and it feels genuine and real to me. When I watch movies, I hate it when there are parts, scenes in the movie where it's like, oh, they just wrote this in to make something work for the narrative or to make something work to convey something. But this all the way through, I was like, oh yeah, that would make sense if you're a crazy person. They don't even have names, you know. It's like every little thing.
It's definitely like I was thinking about it when you were saying with a ghost story, if this is true, then what else is true? It's the same thing with Dogtooth of being like, well, if parents did want to lie to their kids and keep them in there, then they might do this, and then they might do that, and then this might happen. And
they get further and further. They're digging themselves deeper and deeper. What was up with the dog part? I still haven't, like, not them treating, but the dog that was I was like, I know he's learning from the instructor how to like.
I felt like a parallel,
but like
to
he had a dog who was being trained or whatever, and I was like, okay, I know it.
I think there's like a thematic parallel to like the dog being trained the way the kids are, and then also the like practical reason, I guess, within the movie is he wanted a trained guard dog to help keep the kids there.
Was the Doberman his dog, or was the white dog his dog?
I don't even know. Yeah.
There's so many things. Well, and then so you throw in the fact that this movie is like somewhat of a challenge. It's not like your typical, narrative film. But then you throw in that it is a foreign language film. So you're like, you're reading the subtitles, but you're trying to, and then it's like, well, but this isn't presenting like any kind of my mother is Greek born in Athens. That feels relevant to this. Only to say, Greece is not like this. I'm pretty sure. I've been.
If that was someone's takeaway, of like, wow,
I don't want it to be.
Greece is weird.
We don't get a lot of foreign films out of Greece. I don't know if some people maybe are like, this is what they do. Yeah. I'm pretty sure that's mostly not the case.
You should see the world, but don't go to Greece.
But like, so it's like, it's foreign language film, but also from a culture and like that we don't get a ton of Greek foreign films. Yorgos Lanthimos is the only Greek director I can name, like from Greece, So it's like it feels isolating in that respect, watching it like from my living room in California. I'm like, there's a lot of things about this movie that are alienating just baked into it. And then you have those weird scenes where they don't tell you, like it's like our brother lives over the fence and is dead, or he was alive, so they were feeding him, but now he's dead. Just all these weird things that you just pick up. And then like a cat runs out. Yorgos Lanthimos, so many of his movies, he has that moment where it's like seems dark into it, and then he ups the slider on the sexuality or the violence at a time where you don't expect. And it really is quite effectively off-putting. Like when that guy just falls on the cat with the garden shears, when the brother, the son.
Or when she just comes up out of nowhere and slices him with the kitchen knife. That was crazy.
Well, you have
that's the first
arrested
like,
developmental,
moment.
Adults with the minds of children. Yeah, it's like it kind of follows that they would do this. Yeah.
I was gonna, Leonard, was this your first Yorgos?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it was. And I loved, like I saw Lobster in theaters. I saw Killing of a Sacred Deer in theaters. Funny. Like
I saw The Lobster first in theaters, and I don't remember even why, but really liked it. And then watched his subsequent movies, but it wasn't until like a month ago that I watched Dogtooth, because I was like, why haven't I watched this? It's like I love all of his other movies. So for me, it was really interesting being like, you see the roots of everything else. Like there's so much of The Lobster in this, and like you're saying of like the way he's able to shock you with sexuality or violence or things like juxtaposed that you're not used to being juxtaposed. It makes it like not boring at the very least. You're like, oh shit, like you pay attention.
There's a lot of full frontal penetrative sex and nudity in this movie, but it is never sexy. Forgot about that. It's never hot.
It's definitely not. And a disturbing fact that I am not 100% true, but is internet research, is that the sex between the brother and sister is not fake.
Oh God.
Yeah. Okay.
Did you know this?
All right.
Well, it looked real, and I was like, I'm going to look this up, and that is apparently...
She was really... Her hand was really on his penis, for sure. And then it looked like they were really having sex.
The sex in the beginning with Christina, the security guard, that the dad will just blindfold and drive, and which we see presented without any context. So
she's in a uniform. You're like, who is this?
Is he going to kill this woman? But then she's like, my favorite song is that. Like
it's all very chill about it. You're like, what's happening?
He gives her some money. It's like, But that sex scene, which is like 5 minutes into the movie... Also, I was like, how did they fake this? Like that's another one where you're like, this is pretty intimate. Yeah.
So as far as like the context of like, what is a movie you wouldn't watch with a group of friends?
Yeah.
That is a case for it. Like sex in general is kind of weird to watch in a movie with people you know well. But like this kind of sex in particular, where it's just like...
well, now hang on. Game of Thrones was the most popular show on TV for about 10 years.
And they handled sex differently.
America has an appetite. There's an appetite for incest. I'm not saying that.
What's interesting though is like the dialogue is so like simple and like just very like mundane.
Yes.
Which also makes sense because they don't have any pop cultural reference to influence or affect how they speak or think. And then when the eldest daughter, Bruce, sees Rocky, just like instantly, it's like she's just like a different person and she's reenacting and it.
Yeah,
I really loved that scene. It was just like how easily influenced and affected we are by other things, and it creates the person that you are. And she just, her whole mindset changed. Like and it led to, that, and then her having to have sex with her brother kind of changed everything for her.
Yeah.
And we learn about, in the third act, maybe 50 minutes into the movie, that like, how do they escape this? Like, what is the end game? And they are told that because you can't leave the house, the ground you'll die or something unless you're in a car.
Yep.
And you can't drive a car until your dog tooth comes out and then it comes back in.
Yeah. And it's told as if eventually it'll fall out the way your baby teeth did. We just have to wait for that.
Yeah.
And then when you hear that, you're like, oh, wait a second.
Yeah.
Wait a second. And then we have the scene after the terrible sex scene. One of the most uncomfortable scenes I think I've ever seen.
You've seen a lot of sex scenes.
Yes, a lot of sex scenes.
And you can get there with most of them. But this one, no.
Presuming that this is her first time having sex.
Right. Yeah.
We also see her kind of have her sister like lick her for special like there's all sorts of
uncomfortable it's so things. Innocent. It's like
it's innocent-ish. It's like you would, if they were kids, you'd be like, well, kids be a little bit. It's like it's very uncomfortable to watch with two adults.
Well, Christina is the one who, the reason why we see Christina so early, she's the one who is the person who corrupts and is in there.
She's
corrupts
the
and
right. Brings the outside world,
bring the outside world into them, and she is taking advantage of the eldest daughter who then uses that on her, but then they do it in an innocent type of way where they're licking ears and shoulders.
Yeah.
They don't see it in a sexual way.
Or they do, but don't even know what that is.
I think that's it. They have the information.
They're like,
to
I know
like,
this
be
feels
like, I don't
good.
know
This
what
makes
I-
me feel something.
Yeah. Well, because Christina. Yeah. Anyway,
And then
but-
eventually it leads to that. But when they have sex and she's like, if you ever do that again, I'll cut all your guts out. I was like, oh shit. Like this is, and then she's like, I have to escape this place. And she forcefully tries to remove her dog tooth by hitting herself in the face with a free weight. And she hits herself in the face 3 times.
Yeah.
Blood splat. And you can feel you feel the pain, you cringe, but she's like, she's happy. She's like, I can finally escape. Like, it's her. She's not feeling any pain. She's like, it's her moment to escape. She gets in her dad's trunk, which was smart.
Mm-hmm.
And do you think she died in the trunk? I think she died in the trunk. I think she's dead.
Probably. I don't think there's like a way to get out.
She doesn't seem to have also the skill.
She bleeds
doesn't
out.
Seem to be well equipped from her tooth.
She lost like 3 teeth. That's a lot of blood.
I don't know if she bleed out from that, but I don't think she's like well equipped.
There was a lot of blood on her, and she was just in the trunk.
Yeah.
You pass out. I don't know.
I think best case scenario for her, she bangs on the trunk at some point.
Yeah.
But and someone opens it. I guess
Yeah.
someone calls the police and someone opens it, and that's how she's able to get out. But there's another version where I think she suffocates in there.
Yeah. Chokes on her own blood. I don't know. There was a lot of blood, and I was like, "Is she dead? Is she alive?"
You know what was fucked? So I rewatched this movie as I try to do for all the movies we're talking about. But if I've seen a movie before, if I've seen it a lot, I'm like, I don't need to. But this one, I was like, I'm gonna want to rewatch this one. And the first time I saw it, it was on in the pandemic. I went crazy, and I was just watching like 3 movies a day, for a few months in the middle. And I was watching this one because it was on like the Criterion Channel, and it was gonna leave. So I was like, I gotta watch it before.
I
it
watch
leaves.
a lot of movies that way.
That way, yeah. I used the what's leaving this month as my like checklist. And I was on there, and I was like too tired to start this very challenging, very weird movie. And I remember being like those last 20 minutes, I was like, the movie wasn't necessarily putting me to sleep, but I was just already in that like exhausted state. So I did have a thing. I was like, do I remember that this is what happens, or am I some sort of dreamy hallucination that this is what happened? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
So we've talked about both of these films, Leonard.
Yeah. It's time to get
Let's put them through our 5 criteria points and see how they come out.
very important part.
Do either of these movies have a pop cultural footprint at all? That would be number 1, pop culture.
I feel like in a sense maybe both do.
I feel like you don't hear much, but like
I think you kind of have to be in the know. I think you have to kind of be, as far as the moviegoers, I feel like Dogtooth does because of Yago. What is Yagos?
I think it's
Yorgos?
Yorgos, yeah.
Because of the lobster and because of Killing of a Sacred Deer and Poor Things. It's like, it all started with Dogtooth. Mm-hmm. And I mean,
it's like the movie that you find his other movies. I think my first Yorgos movie was The Favorite, which was pretty late in the game, but I was really like that, and I was like, let me see some. My Greek ancestor. Let me see what my brother. So yeah, Dogtooth is a movie that you discover when you see his more commercial, which is like, to call the movies that he makes now commercials kind of funny, but Poor Things was nominated. Emma Stone won the Oscar. All those things. He has like found a lane where his weirdness. He hasn't really had to like shave it down that much, but he's got the budgets, he's got the stars, he's still pretty weird. Still doing his sex violence thing too. But yeah, Dogtooth itself, a pretty indie movie. A Ghost Story, I think you touched on it, Brandon. Like, what is the most interesting part, or one of the most interesting like things when you saw is that he's just in a sheet with the eye holes cut out. He looks like he could be trick or treating.
Yeah.
But you kind of feel like the weight of that sheet. Like I guess I don't know that you give this to the film, but I do think it's interesting. He's playing with like the iconography of ghosts and what we think of like ghost stories and hauntings and things like that. I think this movie, if it has any imprint, it's like how it subverts those things, but still like uses them. Like it's like, it could have just been some sort of creepier spectral thing, or maybe you don't see him at all. But to have him in the sheet feels like a very conscious choice of like, let's play with this and make it really weird. It's not what you'd expect when you see that at all.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like I feel like pop culture influenced this movie. I'm not sure to what degree this movie influenced pop culture.
No, yeah, I don't.
But like for sure, like when the little boy is in bed and he hears the sound in his closet and the door starts to turn, like we've seen that so many times. But now we know this ghost so well compared to that. We've only seen the little boy for a few minutes.
Yeah.
And when the door opens, there's this ghost where it's like, oh, well, he was once in love. And he used to live here and he's lost everything.
And he's haunting these people because he's in pain. Because his
that poor family, that poor single mom.
Yeah,
they're the first
family
who seemed like she really built something nice for them.
Yeah, yeah.
It was weird because it was like, oh,
I didn't want him to get out. I was like, leave him alone.
I felt,
you had your time.
But he was really hurting, and it was,
and almost like their nice familyness upset him. Where he's like, I can't deal with this.
Yes.
Like he dealt much better with the people that were just partying in his house.
Yeah, and then because that house was like kind of run down at that point too, and it felt more suitable to his.
And then in my
state.
mind, the way they were talking and everything that was happening in the house, it kind of goes unsaid, but it felt like they were there because the house was haunted. Did y'all get that feeling?
There was
a line or someone said something
like it had a reputation
because everybody was like talking about there was a tarot reading. There was like aspects of things being said about
I kind of picked
spiritual
up on that.
things. And I was like, oh, they're all there because the house is haunted, because there's a ghost in the house.
Oh, I thought it was like they're like grad students or something, and this house is rented so cheap. But like what you said also makes sense with that, even of like, and there's also like a story of like you would have heard of that story with that family.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
This family left in the middle of the night,
whatever.
Because all their dishes were broken.
Yeah. I also like that the youngest kid was like the most. I do like that about ghost stories too. It's like whether, it's because they believe, but it's like the younger ones, the ones closer to life are the closest to death. I don't know. It's like in those horror movies, there's always the ones that are the most like. Yeah.
Well, this is gonna be an interesting question, especially for mine. How well did these movies hold up?
I mean, Casey Affleck's not doing too much right now. I don't feel like but he's not really under that sheet, or rather, you don't really see much. I don't think there's really anything in either of our movies. Like incest hasn't held up well, but all the things that Dogtooth is playing with were taboo back then. Like they're making very intentional choices. So
very intentional.
We don't only Brandon talk about this in terms of like, oh, did this person get whatever? But like that can be contextual or meta contextual. Like I don't know. I mean, I feel like there was like a period where is this movie? I should know. It's my pick. Is the Ghost Story A24? Do we know where that is? Okay.
Yep.
Because it just feels like there was that point of time where A24 was just like, I mean, it still has a reputation for kind of high quality, kind of indie features, whatever. Yeah. But it was like anything they threw out, people would like get it on a mug or get it on a t-shirt. Yeah. And I remember hearing about A Ghost Story because of that reason. Yes, people were like, A24 came out with another weird one. Yeah. And I was like, all right, let me see what's up with this.
Yeah, there was a period of time where like if A24 put out a movie, I was going to see it. And then I got burned a couple times.
Right. Yeah, eventually.
What are the big burns? I'm trying to even think.
A Green Knight.
That was weird. I did see that.
Same director, by the way.
Yeah.
I didn't do that research, but I was going to ask you guys, like, what else has that guy done?
He did
Green Knight. That's fascinating that these are made by the same person.
He did Ain't Them Bodies,
slow moving movie.
Ain't Them Bodies Saints, which I haven't seen, but that also has Casey Affleck and Rooney Mara. And then he made a live action adaptation of Pete's Dragon for Disney in like 2016 or something. He's got kind of an odd. There's a movie or two I'm forgetting. Wow. But yeah, what I like about his movie. I was going to say his movies, but I've only seen the one, is that he's definitely fully in control of the narrative. Like you're saying, and I agree, like I love a movie where I don't totally know where it's going to go. And I agree with that in the cases where I feel like the director does and I'm in good hands. I think sometimes you see a movie where you're like, I don't know what this movie's trying to be. And I don't have personally the confidence that they know what they're doing either. It's like, it feels like they just did this because they didn't have an idea. This one was like, right or wrong, if I'm with it or not, I feel like he is definitely like, this is how the story I want to tell, and this is how I want to tell it. And it's weird, and it's definitely alienating. That like 80%, I can't imagine what the cinema score for this was, like not the critics reviews, but the audience review. It would have to be like 40% if it's anything.
We'll find out.
Well, it's not also, well, actually, I think A Ghost Story, because of maybe how it was marketed, might have a lower score only because more people are going into it not knowing it's going to be weird. I feel like people who go watch Dogtooth,
they know.
No,
it's called Dogtooth.
You have to find it on Criterion. It's not on Netflix with the horror. Yeah,
right. Yeah.
I will say this about Ghost Story: the acting, amazing. Like Rooney Mara, and like I just felt like you can kind of feel it. Like it was good, even to the kids and the family. The only part maybe it was a little heavy-handed was the party scene, where it's just like, okay, this is.
They were fully leaning into. Yeah, they're like, this is the one time where we will maybe talk about the thesis of this movie for 10 minutes. But I also think that did make sense. Like, I've been that guy at a party. I don't know if I've been that guy at a party, but I've been sat next to that guy at a party. Yeah. I just feel like I've been to the part where people are just like, I'm pretty toasted. I'm going to tell you about
everybody at the party
the
stopped to listen to him.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've never had that happen.
That was wild.
Maybe not to that extent, but I'm like, this is a recognizable guy.
Yeah,
I feel like
for sure.
If you've been to a party in Brooklyn at 3 a.m.
He almost felt like what Jamie Kennedy in Scream, like where he stops and he's like explaining
the most broken down version of Jamie Kennedy, like the least genre version of that.
All right, now the most important question.
The most important one
was
Jennifer
Coolidge in either one of these movies.
So Brandon, this is a freebie kind of point. If Jennifer Coolidge is in either of these movies, we win.
But
oh wow!
But I don't think she was in a Ghost Story unless she was like Casey Affleck's sheet double.
Yeah, did a day as the sheet.
Did a day. Yeah, we try to choose a popular character actor, see if they're in a movie. We don't win, but we're like, you should, if that should influence your pick, and you should give us points.
Great.
Unfortunately, we are 0 for Jennifer Coolidge right
so far
in
this season.
episode 6 of this season, or episode 5.
But if Jennifer Coolidge was in either one of
yes.
these movies, who would she be? Who would she
Rooney
play?
Mara.
Rooney Mara.
I think she's the realtor who drops the pile.
Yes. Yeah.
I was thinking Rooney Mara because I was just thinking that scene from Legally Blonde where she's like, makes me want to eat what is it? Makes me want to eat something real bad. I blew the line.
I know what you mean, but I can't remember what it was.
Yeah. But all the people that love Legally Blonde are getting me. But I'm just, it would be funny to watch her just eat that full pie. She probably makes more sense as the
Jennifer
realtor.
Coolidge as the mom in Dogtooth would have made it a little bit more.
I was definitely thinking that. I was thinking, is she the mom or is she the security guard that they bring over? But I think she's the mom.
Ooh, yeah.
She could be.
To teach sex?
Yeah.
That's a very Stifler's mom role if you're going to have it in that context.
Oh, wow.
What was the mom? Because there's that moment on the phone where the dad not on the phone, I'm sorry, where the dad's at work and he works at some just factory and he has and I mean clearly it's like backstory, but it's like, oh, your wife in that scene is like, oh, we'd love to have you over, but my wife and the accident and the thing, and he's like, she should come out, and it was just interesting like how they would like see his backstory of how he like is selling this to the rest of the world, because very obviously we are not living in an apocalypse scenario, right, like his children believe or whatever. And I was just like, oh, I do love that he would just slow drip some of that information. Yes. And you'd just be like, he's not interested in telling you the whole picture of why this all happened, but he'll give you some pieces and you can try to
what's
put
also
your own.
Interesting is like they've created a prison for themselves. She can't leave the children unattended.
It's not going well for her.
Yes. But she's a co-conspirator. She's not, sure. I don't think of her as a fellow victim like the kids, you know.
They're 20, 25 years.
She's definitely complicit, but I feel like the movie makes it feel like she's feeling the effects as the person who also never leaves more than their husband is.
Yeah. She's like, bring me chocolate. They can't experience the outside world. They have to listen to certain music in their headphones.
What was that? I was trying to remember. They play like a Frank Sinatra song, and he's told them a reinterpretation of what it means, but I couldn't remember.
Grandpa. It's their you guys want to hear Grandpa sing? And
that's right.
I'm forgetting what Frank Sinatra song it was. But he's like, you are very good children. I love you very much. Listen to your mother and father. Your mother and father love you. Like it's just like
because they're listening to it in English and they speak Greek
and they don't know.
And the dad can translate it any way he wants.
Oh my goodness! And it's wow because they do have a television. They do have music, but it's like
a television with just the videos that he plays, which I think are all home movies.
And when they learn, like, what's pussy, what's zombie, like
fly me to the moon,
fly me to the moon. It was,
and also because they have so little like knowledge of music, it's amazing to them. They're like, this music is awesome.
When he's playing just the same riff over and over again. It's like they don't even want to teach him different types of it might expand his mind too much. Like it was an experience.
So in summation, Jennifer Coolidge is not in either of these films.
Not in them.
But we can talk some stats.
Let's talk some stats.
I can't imagine these were box office juggernauts, either of them, but we'll find some interesting.
Okay, let's talk about Dogtooth. The film came out in 2009. It was a budget of I don't know what
How many drachma it
yeah,
costs?
250,000 drachma.
I feel like I heard it was $300,000.
Okay.
There we go. Let's go with that.
And then box office $1.4 million. So that's technically a win. That's a win. 4 times, 3 times,
Both of these movies, I think, had a good strategy as far as like a low budget.
Yeah.
Yes. One location.
One location. We paid
Dogtooth,
Casey
I think,
Affleck for one day. That's all we need.
I know we usually go one and then the other, but I'll just trade mine now since I'm looking at it. 100,000 for a ghost story.
Wow.
That's crazy.
100,000, which
Wow.
I would think
Feature.
would be the cost of
'Cause-
just knocking that house down. But I mean, that's
because
what
you don't need Rooney
that's what the
or
budget-
Casey for very long.
clearly working on.
Wow.
They took a cut for this.
It
And
probably
then
took
box
about
office
15 days to film this, I would say. It seemed like there wasn't, it was
Yeah.
all in the same house.
it was $100,000 to make $2 million,
Okay.
which was the box
Good
office
return.
take. Pretty
Great
good.
return.
Yeah.
Dogtooth on Rotten Tomatoes, it is 93% from the critics, 76% audience. And IMDb is 7.2.
Okay.
Not bad.
Rotten Tomatoes, it's a 91% critical fresh
Okay.
for a ghost story. And let me find this
I believe it's like 63%.
67% on the
67%.
popcorn meter, 6.8 on IMDb. So similar to that's 6.8 on IMDb. I used to like frequent the IMDb message boards back when they had them 15 years ago or whatever, 20 years ago. And I do feel like a 6.8 is a movie that people don't know what to do with. It's better than just good.
Yeah.
Like I think 6 and below is like, maybe this movie's not so good. And then like a 7 and above is like, this movie's great, but it's, somewhere in the range. 6.8 is people being like, I think it's good. Or maybe I was bored out of my mind.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think
Like, I don't
either
know
people
if
loved
people
it or
know how
they
to-
hated it.
91% critics totally makes sense because critics are like, I'm not sure, but I'm not gonna.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
trust
don't
this
seem dumb.
movie.
Smart.
I want to sound
This
smart.
movie's not smarter than me.
I would say with both movies, if you took 100 random Americans from a mall and made them watch these, and it's like, how many of them liked it? 8 people.
Yeah,
It's-
both movies.
yeah,
Totally.
both movies.
100%.
It's
Yeah.
like 67% is reflective of the people who would even start it.
Yeah.
Exactly. And because I honestly was kind of surprised at both scores, especially the critic scores, but I think it's like, I don't want people to.
Well, it's just funny because we talked about a lot of these movies. A lot of movies that Leonard will pick are quote unquote black movies,
Uh-huh.
and there is a
Black
movie.
bias.
There's a black bias, a black movie tax, where if it was made now critics are like, oh, it's a movie about black people by black filmmakers, and they will be fawning. But back in the 90s, it's like you're knocking 15% off what that score probably should be to start.
It's
and then like,
disrespectful.
Right.
and so you got all these movies, and it's like that movie's really good, and you look it up, it's like 45%. And Leonard is always justifiably like, "What the hell?" But now it is so funny to see a ghost story, which is Casey Affleck in a sheet. It's just like 91%. Take your kids.
Yeah, that's so funny.
All right, Leonard, we've arrived at the final part of our criteria. We have final arguments, and you're going to go first.
I believe you. I went first last
when the
time.
back is against the wall,
Okay.
you have to go first until you don't.
Okay, both of these movies are interesting. I would say one is definitively weird and is purposefully weird, so that helps for sure. I'm going to tell you what happened when I watched this movie yesterday. I watched this movie yesterday. My roommate comes home from work, who was my friend before we were roommates.
Mhm.
Okay.
He comes in. He says, "What the hell are you watching?"
Which movie are you talking about?
Dogtooth.
Okay.
I'm watching Dogtooth. He sits down and watches the last 30 minutes of the movie with me. And he was basically looking at me like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Like you're watching a snuff film.
Yes. And he was like, he's like, is this for your podcast? I was like, yes. He's like, Quinn chose this. I was like, no. He's like, you chose this movie? And I was like, yes, I chose this
Wow.
movie.
I was
And
shocked that you gave
Then I
this
told
movie.
him the prompt and he was like, okay, this fucking movie from beginning to end is weird.
Mhm.
We open with a woman being blindfolded, answering questions in a car, having sex with a child. Children are counting stickers. You know how many stickers you have. 52 is not more than 76. You're not going to win this week.
If you haven't learned math,
There's incest. There's gore. We see a kitten get murdered. We see someone self-mutilate them. Like we see disturbing things. We just learned that they were actually having sex. This movie's fucking weird, man. Ghost Story.
Not fully confirmed.
We've not fully confirmed. It felt like okay. Oh, that and
I want to hang that on.
I was saving this for this moment. My roommate was like, "They're really having sex right now. What, are they?" I was like, "No, they're not. There's no." I was like, "She really is touching his dick right now," but I don't think they're really having sex. But
I would not be surprised if they were.
Yes, it was strange. It was weird. It was uncomfortable. Why is her head on the baseboard? Like, come on, what is happening? Ghost Story is, I feel very artsy. I feel like Ghost Story, if you watch it with it depends on the friend. One friend might love it. It also maybe isn't a movie you would watch with a friend. It maybe is a movie you would watch with a loved one or yourself because it is a little depressing, but it also has a certain narrative. It's some people, your friend might not want to watch it because it was boring and they didn't enjoy it and they didn't have a good time. But I don't think they would be upset with you at how weird it was after. And I think maybe after you watch Ghost Story with a friend, there might be a discussion on what was this? Like, what did you feel about this? How did, what was the experience more so in a thoughtful type of way than a weird way? I think Dogtooth, you watch this with a friend and you suggested it'd be like, Leonard, do you need to talk about? Is there something we need to talk about? And I think that's why Dogtooth is a weirder movie that I don't think you should ever watch with a friend.
Okay. I'm going to try to put my thoughts in order succinctly. I feel like you just got at one of my arguments for Ghost Story, which is you would never tell a friend to watch a Ghost Story with you. You said you might watch this with a loved one, which I would think, I don't know that you would, or you'd watch it by yourself because it is a movie that if you've seen it and you're trying to sell other people on it, what are you telling them to? Like, you want to watch a movie that is sometimes literally watching paint dry with some profound questions. But the question, you can get what is the meaning of life from a ton of other movies, and you don't have to watch Casey Affleck in a sheet. The fact that I do not know how much I like it. I don't know how much. I don't know if I think it's great or if I think it's interesting. I do think that kind of contributes to the weirdness. It is not weird in the way that Dogtooth is weird. Dogtooth is weird because it is sometimes vulgar. It's shocking. It is like visceral in a lot of different ways. Ghost Story is like operating on like a low hum. And it's weird in the sense that it's like, I don't know that I've seen a movie kind of play out like this, like so loose on narrative. So the conception is interesting, but it's, and I think maybe Brandon, like to the point of your sister, and when you say it was maybe your sister and her husband or something, they started it and they were like, nah, like they couldn't watch it together for more than 10 minutes because they were like, I think I get what this movie, because it's boring, but because it's weird. Weird doesn't necessarily mean like it's weird because, I would say shit that is like weird, like we live in LA. People go to screenings of movies that are fucked up. I think your movie is fucked up. Yeah. And I think it's weird, but it's fucked up. People go to midnight screenings of that shit. Come, bring your friends. Oh my God, when she hits herself with the darbell, come, you got to see this movie. Siblings be having sex with each other. There's sex. There are things every 10, 15 minutes in this movie that make you go, whoa, weird. What? I think my movie is more of a like, this movie's too weird. It's operating at a frequency that I don't really know that. And I would never at a party, I might say, oh, you guys want to watch something fucked up and weird? Like, let's put on Dogtooth. This movie will make you go, what the hell? I would not say that with Ghost Story because I'd be like, that you put that movie out, you're
going to an arts college?
You're not putting that movie on. Right? Yeah, so I think we do. What we're basically left here is with two kinds of weird. And I think there's probably no wrong answer. I liked both of our picks, and I'm glad that you watched one the week before you offered this, Brandon, because I was like, man, I feel bad for Brandon. Just like, here's two weird ass movies that but we have come to the end of our final arguments. Brandon, talk as much or as little as you'd like.
Yeah, I genuinely came in today, I think, without a clear, like, it'll definitely be this. And as I think as we were talking today, I think what I've come up with is, I think I would be more likely to tell a friend I knew pretty well, go watch Dogtooth, than I would a Ghost Story. But I think I would be more uncomfortable watching Dogtooth like on the couch next to a friend than I would be with a Ghost Story. Like, I think if someone put on a Ghost Story at their apartment, I'd be like, I'd watch the whole thing with them and be like, oh, it's sort of a slow paced movie. It was interesting. We watched the whole pie being eaten and stuff. But with like with Dogtooth, there'd be scripts and it's like, oh, it's a little uncomfortable that we're watching, I think, like real penetrative sex together. We've never done that in our friendship.
You never watched porn with your friends?
Certain people have. No, I was never that guy.
Yeah, me neither.
So for me, I would say Dogtooth is the one that I'd be like, that is too weird to watch with friends.
All right.
Shout out to your season 7 champion.
The fix
Leonard
was
Smith.
in from the beginning. Leonard was buttering Brandon up.
Smith Jr.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as he brought up improv nerds, I was like, come on.
Hey, I needed this win.
Congratulations, Leonard.
I'm back, baby.
You were not aware of this, Brandon, because we don't want to make it. We don't want to sway your decision making that way, unless we do. Sometimes we decide that we do, and we really want to get the win. But we do 9 contests this season. Winner has to get 5 at least. This is episode 6. Leonard has just reached 5 wins for the season.
Wow.
It wasn't close.
Last season.
It wasn't close. You picked a weird one.
I picked a weird one. I was like instantly Dogtooth.
You went high.
I got it.
You went high. I have to go low. Also, the synchronicity. I assume you didn't like.
I did
the
not
fact
know.
that you picked a movie that he watched a week ago and inspired the prompt. What
That's
chance
crazy.
did I have?
Yeah.
I feel like that was
Brandon's like, oh, I just watched Dogtooth. And I didn't tell him that it was my movie. And I was like, I got this one in the bag, baby. Ghost Story.
It's weird, but it's inoffensive.
I'm glad I watched it for sure.
Yeah.
You'll be, because here's the thing about Ghost Story. You'll be thinking about it for the next, like I probably watched it 3-4 years ago now, the first time. And I still think about it sometimes. It is one of those movies that like, if you get through it and you sort of sit through the experience, you're like, it leaves you with this. I remember feeling weird the rest of that day. I watched it like on a Sunday at noon, which is bad time. But I remember it'll stick with you in weird ways. Yeah. But not the kind of weird that we were going with.
Now I'm going to watch Poor Things this week.
Yeah, check it out.
And you said the MVP, or what was it?
The Favorite.
The Favorite.
Now, yeah, that was one thing I wanted to mention too. Something that's interesting about like the Yorgos Lanthimos movies is he has a Greek writing partner. That all of his like really weird movies are with that guy.
Yeah.
Including Poor Things.
Okay.
And then there's like this, I think, British writer who he wrote The Favorite with, who's also the guy who created The Great, that series.
Oh.
And he writes like a totally different kind of movie with that guy.
The Favorite to me feels like his tamest movie.
For sure.
You know, there's nothing really that like
a different writing
crazy.
partner.
Yeah.
Brandon, where can the people find you? Anything you want to plug?
I co-created this animated show for adults on Peacock called In the Know. It's stop motion animation. It stars Zach Woods, who I co-created it with. So if you haven't seen that and you have Peacock, check that out.
Yeah,
definitely check it out.
I'm gonna get Peacock today.
I have
to watch it. You have Peacock?
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice.
Brandon, thank you so much for watching these 2 movies and talking about them with us.
It was a joy.
Thank you. I guess I shouldn't thank you for anointing Leonard our season 7 champion, but it makes sense. You are Leonard's improv guru, so nice that he got to give you the title.
Yeah,
Special.
yeah. Wouldn't want it from anybody else.
And until then, we will see you at the cinema. Thank you for watching or listening.
Leave the house.